The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. This may be an odd video. It's definitely not going to be one of the popular videos, and that's okay. That's how it goes sometimes. This isn't about popularity anyway. Um, it's funny. A lot of people who've never met me, I think they hear me say things like, this isn't about the money, and I don't care about the views. And like, yeah, he's just saying that though. It's not real. And then they meet me like, okay, yeah, that he does not care. Which is clear. To me, I think it's clear just if you listen to the general audio quality and the single take. Like every video is a single take. There's no editing. Like, I mean, it's all there. It's all baked in. It's the idea that every now and then I'll get kind of bored and I'll put like a couple pieces of art through the video. Most of the time, like, fuck it, I'll just pick some piece of art that vaguely kind of resembles the audio that I recorded roughly 1 month ago and throw it in there. The goal is to have a chat. And weirdly, that's what this video is kind of about. So here's my theory. So I've recently caught up with somebody, and this is somebody I've talked to for a long time, never met in real life. So I got to meet the guy in real life, and we had a good conversation, kind of all different things, really kind of a fun, engaging, good adult conversation. And very little about comic books, a little bit about comic books, but not too much. And it was just good. It was easy, nice, natural conversation. I've had lots of conversations with people that are really awkward and weird, particularly people if you've known for a while, but you haven't actually met them in real life, and you have the in-person conversation. It's like, hi, how about the weather? It is warm. Yes, it is summer, so therefore the weather is warm. You just have these kind of awkward, like, I am going to say something that will fill some time, and then I will hope that nothing happens for a while, and then I can talk again in 5 minutes. You have those kinds of moments. But this was not it. It was just very easy conversation, which is really, what I hope for. But what it reminded me of are the conversations that I would have in the shop, where you have people come in and they would talk about random things. And yes, there is the classic comic book conversation of like who would win between the Hulk and Superman, or Darkseid and Silver Surfer, or whatever, these kind of fantasy matchups. But the more fun part, and it's a little harder to define and describe, is when the conversation is just easy and fluid, and it's stuff like, hey, I've got an idea for a comic, and here's my comic. And you just talk about these ideas. I've got lots of ideas for comics. I suspect anyone who has read, collected, kind of thought about comics for any length of time, you have lots of your own stories. And sometimes they include, popular characters, and sometimes they include, they're basically people that in your own imagination, brand new characters, brand new inventions that nobody's ever talked about like you. And this is how the conversations would go. I remember people coming in and saying, hey, you know what? I have a really great idea for a spy thriller comic. And in the comic, there'd be this moment and this moment and this moment, and they would kind of all lead together like this. And this was the kind of stuff you would live for. It was kind of excitement about comics. It's where you get a bunch of people together in a room who are passionate about comics, who love comics, who care about comics, and they can talk about anything to do with comics, and it's a fairly fun, engaging conversation. It's not weird. It's not, it's not awkward. It's not stilted. It's a fun talk about the idea of a story. You're basically, you're a storyteller and you're telling a story. Now, I'm going to jump away from that really quickly to an article, and this may seem like a real non sequitur, but I promise it comes back together. Heidi McDonald posted an article where basically she was talking about the Marvel malaise. And it is, it's kind of all about how Marvel is not doing very well. The article name is it's Can Anything Cure Marvel's Malaise? And in the article, she goes on for a long period of time where she says a lot of stuff, but really she says nothing about the excitement doesn't seem to be there for Marvel. And there's even this one line in our comics seem to have come down off their pandemic high or maybe leveled. Hey, I'm sorry. No, comics have come severely down. Severely. There is nobody with a straight face who can tell you that comic books are kind of hanging in there to pandemic highs. When we say pandemic highs, what we really mean is the 4 to 6 months immediately following the lockdown and businesses being closed, where people went in and spent some of their pandemic money and just wanted something to do, so they overbought a little bit. We're talking like about a 10% boom, 10% bump up in comics. That's, you go around and talk to a lot of comic shops, and trust me, I talked to a lot of the smaller ones and the big ones. That was it. There was no massive like tripling of comic sales at all. This was a lie a lot of people got to tell themselves, but it was not actually true. So, but in this article, she talks about, well, there's this confusion over the MCU or with comics, and it doesn't really seem like they found their footing with. She basically goes through every possible scenario for why Marvel doesn't seem hot and exciting right now, except the really obvious one. And it's that people aren't talking about it. People aren't discussing Marvel. People aren't fantasizing about where the storylines could go. So that's why I'm bringing these two topics together. That's the problem in comics, is that there is increasingly less and less people fantasy booking comics. When was the last time you went to Twitter and there was an engaging thread that was about, hey, who should be the next Avengers team, with a lot of in-depth thought commentary and like who would be the new Masters of Evil if you add one or whatever? When was the last time you've had that? Yes, there are definitely some people who go on Twitter and say, hey, the perfect Avengers team would be all non-white characters who are also, all kinds of different type of... You get those kind of comments, but those aren't real. Those are people trolling. Those aren't people who are actually like, I would go buy a comic book like that. Those are people who go, hey, it would really piss off the bad people, the people who deserve it. What if all the Avengers were black? It's like, nobody asks the obvious question. Is the story good? Like, what's going on? I tell you right now, I could pitch you a Avengers comic with a all-black Avengers team that would be pretty badass, where they go off and do pretty cool stuff. You could definitely do a Sam Wilson Cap or Falcon. You could put Blue Marvel in there. You could put Black Panther in there. You could put Monica Rambeau in there. Storm is there for some reason. You could have a all black Avengers, and they go up against who knows, just a super powered wrecking crew. That'd be kind of a dumb villain because they've been made into a joke. But you go up against hey, some shit's going down, and Thor's off jerking off in Asgard or something, and Iron Man's doing his suit, and it was a day like no other. The only people who showed up at the Avengers Mansion to answer the call were African-American superheroes, black superheroes. I can't say African-American because Black Panther's in there. No, obviously not African-American, but all black superheroes show up, and they're like, hey, let's go fight this villain. And then you have a fight. You could easily create a story like that. But my point is, nobody on Twitter is telling that story. Nobody on Twitter is fantasy booking what this comic could be. And the thought process I had from tonight is how few conversations I have about what comics could be, about people with a cool story or a cool idea. There's not many. There's definitely a few people. There's people who send me various kind of pitches and ideas and things they want to do, but by and large, nobody is really talking about that. And if you want to have a robust comic industry, if you want to cure Marvel's malaise, you have to get people talking about what Marvel could be. That's the secret. That's the answer. You basically need people who are going to go back into a comic shop and go, hey, you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see a comic where, and by the way, these ideas could be dumb. It doesn't have to be that all these ideas are gold coming out of people's minds. It's that they care enough to give the ideas. It's that they care enough to go into the shop and actually talk through this stuff and go, I've got a sci-fi story. I've got a horror story. You know what would be really cool is if, we did a comic where, Blade realized that his kind of vampirism is slowly running out. And he's got, I don't know, 90 days before he kind of loses those abilities. And he knows that he is likely going to, there's no way he can survive because all the kind of various vampire nations, people who he harmed over the years, the people who have been in fear with him are going to come for him. And he's not going to have the ability to, defend himself using his powers. And, maybe he's going to age now more and he's just going to suddenly like jump up 30 years or whatever. And he's got to struggle with that. And look, if you've been in a comic shop, you probably have had tossed around ideas and given suggestions of how they should go. This is a staple of a comic book shop. But there's fewer of those conversations today, and very few, if any of them, have gone online. The attention span of people online who are into comics has become about clowning each other and about attacking another group. That group is hate group, that group is a bunch of SJWs, whatever. That's the conversation. Very rarely are people showing up to, give creative ideas about where they wish the comics would go. And I think that is an exact barometer to why Marvel has malaise, why DC is struggling, why the independents haven't really taken off. It's because you've got to have an audience, a fan base, that cares enough to imagine what could be. Even if they know, and look, from the 80s and 90s, when a lot of us would talk about comics in the shop, we knew Marvel was not going to suddenly drop out of the rafters and go, this is a perfect idea. I'll make it into, your ideas are going into the vapor and nobody's ever going to do anything about it. But you did it anyway because you cared about, having imagination, having dreams about where these comics could go. The lack of people caring about what could happen is exactly the problem of where we're at, where you don't have people excited about comics. And I'll take it one step further. When you hear people who are relatively new writers who are coming into comics talking about their comic or their story idea, they will say things like, it's about time we had a female Iron Man. That isn't a story. That's an idea to dunk on someone else. Could you make a female Iron Man, a woman in the Iron Man suit, interesting? Of course, you could do that in 800 different ways. You could put Misty Knight in there and run an interesting story. You could have Pepper do where she has to fill in. You could have a surprise character under the costume. You don't know who it is. It turns out it's Rogue because her powers are gotten out of control and she doesn't want to touch people with her skin. There's like a million ways you could tell a story, but that's not what you hear from people. Instead, you hear the very basic, it's about time we finally had a Latinx member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Like what does that even mean? That's a demographic statement. It's not a story. You need a story. And if you have people who are creative, who are imagining where these stories could go, then I think you have interest in comics. So to me, the big mystery, the secret, like what Heidi was searching for, like why are people struggling with comics? Why are comics in a slump? Because the imagination has been turned off. That's why. Very few people are doing it now. It's not what Twitter's about, not what Facebook's about, not what social media is about. And by and large, as I've visited friends in comic shops and I've gone in and talked, people aren't talking in comic shops much either. They come in, they buy it, they leave. The conversation is key. So it was a fun night tonight. I should have taken a picture. It would have set the internet ablaze. It would have been a fun thing to do, but we just talk comics. By the way, for a lot of people who are like, I know what that conversation would be like. No, you don't, because we just talk comics. All we did was chat about comic ideas and other things. Like I said, we had a good conversation about all kinds of stuff, technology, lots. But we talked comics, and that was refreshing. That was nice. It made me feel good. It made me feel like, reattached to comics. That's what this industry needs. It sounds simple. It needs people who actually want to talk about comics. Good, bad, imaginary, doesn't really matter. Talk about them. I keep saying one more thing. Here's one more thing. Consider for a moment all the conversation around how, You're not supposed to say negative things about comics. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to insult a comic. Don't you know somebody worked hard on that comic? You can't say anything bad about it. I think it's better when people talked about their disappointments of comics than not talked about them at all. Certainly there's a limit to that. People just shitting on comics left and right. I don't think that's necessarily helpful. But, if you talk about a run, like consider that when people talked about how much they disliked the Chuck Austen X-Men run, that's still more healthy than a lot of what we have now, where people are kind of chastised for talking negatively about comics, or they just say, I hate everything. In a weird way, the Chuck Austen X-Men time frame was healthier for comics. Consider that. Anyway, there you go. There's a bunch of bullshit for me on a Thursday night. Thanks for listening.